Most VA claims don't get denied because veterans aren't eligible. They get denied because the claim wasn't built correctly. In this video, I'm breaking down 5 different tips that decide whether your claim gets approved or denied. And if you're missing even one of these, you might be leaving your rating to chance. So let's fix that. The first tip is to make sure you know what you're filing. You want to make sure that you're filing the correct claim. But before I even jump into that, intent to file is the most important thing. If you don't know what that is, let me tell you. The intent to file is simply going online to va.gov or going to your VSO or any other accredited rep and either creating an account online and pushing the button to file a claim. It will automatically create your intent to file. And that way, when you get all of your evidence and everything ready to submit, you can submit it as long as it's within 1 year, and the VA will give you back pay to that date that you put in your intent to file. So that's super important. All right. So there's different types of claims that you can file for. You can do just a regular new claim, direct service connection. You can do an increase for something that you're already service connected for, or you can appeal a previous decision, whether it was a service connection issue or you just don't agree with the rating that you got. So just for simple terms here, a new claim, that can be something that you just simply haven't filed for before. It might be something that you're trying to get direct service connection to, something that that's in your records, or that you can articulate that, whatever condition you're dealing with was caused by, your service. Then there's presumptive claims, which essentially are going to be something where you'll tie your current condition to something that happened to you in the military that is considered presumptive. So common conditions, probably the most common condition is tinnitus or ringing in the ear. And so if you can articulate that you were with, in a certain MOS or a certain career field, and that career field had loud noise exposures, and there's a list floating around on the internet that says which, jobs in the military can get presumptive service connection for tinnitus. That's an example of that. Other ones are like if you've been out of the military for less than a year, there's a bunch of chronic illnesses that if you get that, one of them is arthritis, but there's many out there, they'll consider it presumptive. And then probably most popular right now is the PACT Act. So if you were in a certain place at a certain time or with different exposures, there's a whole list of conditions out there that if you currently have them, they are considered presumptive. So those are actually really easy to get. And then last but not least is secondary conditions. And secondary conditions are conditions that you might already have service connected, and you are trying to prove that that condition that you currently have that's service connected caused a different condition that you're currently diagnosed for. These are a little bit more complex, but they are a great way to increase your current rating and get the right picture of your VA disability, so that you're accurately rated. So those are your new claims. Increases are going to be something that maybe you were service connected for a long time ago, or even recently, and you've noticed that your condition has gotten worse, and so you want to increase your rating. You want to request that the VA increase the rating percentage. So that's another one. And then the last one might just be, are you appealing a previous decision from before? So you could, there's different appeal options. I won't go into all of them on this video, but those are essentially the different things that you can do. And I suggest doing this online, or going to a VSO. But if you're doing it online, you can kind of see everything, how it is. And basically they're going to ask you, hey, is this a new claim or is this an appeal? And everything's pretty intuitive, so it should be pretty easy to figure out. I will say the VA website sometimes can get a little difficult to find different things, but once you're in there, it should be pretty simple to do. So now that you know where you are or what claim you're putting in for, let's move on to number 2. You want to be able to prove the VA's 3 requirements, and this is all over the internet, so a lot of people know this, but for those of you who are new to this process, I'm going to take a few minutes to explain it because I didn't understand it when I first started, and I was just throwing spaghetti on the wall. So the VA wants you to be able to prove to them that you have a current diagnosis. Okay, so you got to have some sort of medical evidence, a doctor that says you are diagnosed with this condition. Then they want you to be able to show them that something related to your active duty service happened. So something that you can anchor, your current condition to, an event that happened. And it could be an injury that happened to you while you were in the military. It could even be wear and tear. As long as you can connect the dot between that current diagnosis and that in-service connection, it can be an exposure to, burn pits. It could be a loud noise exposure. It could be something as simple as an injury that happened to you in a car accident while you were off duty on leave. So those are all the different things to think about. And then obviously I kind of already touched on the third part, and that's the nexus between those two things. You got to be able to show that. You got to be able to show them with evidence. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go on. All right, number 3, the evidence they need. You don't want to waste a lot of time giving them things that they don't need. You need to know what they need and what's going to be considered credible and what's going to be considered, convincing. Obviously, I just talked about having a current diagnosis, so you want some sort of medical records to show that you have a current diagnosis, and it should be from somebody who's qualified to give a diagnosis. It shouldn't be a personal statement where you say you have a condition and you don't have any medical records to back it up. It's got to be by somebody who's qualified to make a diagnosis of that condition. And really, that means a nurse practitioner, a doctor, a physician assistant, chiropractor, any of those, anybody that's qualified to make a diagnosis would work. And then, of course, what you want to do is you want to anchor that evidence to service connection. Okay, so you want to show that something happened while you were in the military, and that something that happened caused this current diagnosis. There's a lot of different evidence that you can use to show this. And you just need something credible to show this. It could be in the form of your service treatment records, where maybe you went to the doctor when you were injured, and let's just say you hurt your elbow, and now you have some sort of elbow condition. That can be a way to show how this thing originated, and then you just need to be able to, build on that to show, that it wasn't, that you're currently dealing with it, or you continue to have pains in your elbows or your knees or whatever it is. And that's good medical evidence to show that. Service treatment records is a great way. Maybe you weren't diagnosed with whatever condition you currently have, but if you can show that something happened while you were in the military, you went to the doctor, and here's the medical records from the military to show that could have happened there, that's a good start in grabbing good, credible evidence to show that and to anchor that to something that happened to you in service. Another one is just a personal statement from you, articulating it. And I'll talk a little bit more about personal statements here in a minute. But buddy statements too, like maybe you never went to the doctor. Maybe someone that served with you can write a statement to say, I remember on, this date or this year we were deployed here and this happened to this veteran. And, that coupled with maybe your personal statement or other buddy statements can show the VA that, at least there was a record of something happening. Like there's some sort of evidence here. Deployment records, DD Forms 214 can show things, maybe you're trying to connect something, or maybe you're trying to connect some knee pain or back pain or shoulder pain. Maybe you can show that you jumped out of airplanes or you were air assault, or maybe you can show that you did a lot of long road marches that were, during maybe a certain training period where there was very little time to recover. Maybe you can show that with those records. And then, of course, post-service treatment records. So when you got out of the military and you continue to go to medical maybe every 2-3 years for a condition, that just kind of shows the continuity of all of it. And it may even be able to show progressiveness and like how this thing developed. And that was true in my case for some of the conditions that I have. I was able to show that, I started to go to the doctor, and, when you look at everything and the totality of everything, it shows that this thing very likely could have started in the military. And then lastly, for evidence, you want to look at 38 CFR. That's where, 38 CFR holds all of the potential conditions that you could file for, and it shows the rating criteria for each. And that's a really important thing that I overlooked a lot was, I was trying to prove service connection, but I kind of failed on some of my conditions to show how bad they were. And, you want to be able to show like where you are, because otherwise you're getting, you'll get rated at 0% or 10%, and because you just didn't provide evidence to show where you currently are in the rating criteria. So you want to ask yourself, do I have evidence to prove that I'm at this rating percentage, so that you're not wasting time later on? Next, you want to tell your story, and this is where I'm going to talk about personal statements, because I feel pretty confident that you should bring a personal statement or use a personal statement in most claims. You want to be able to put this together for the rater. You want to be able to show them a picture, almost drawing a picture, but using words, right? You want to tell them up front, like, I'm claiming a condition. I'm claiming this condition. You can even put the diagnostic code in there, which you can find in 38 CFR, and you can write that in the very top. I am filing a claim for for chronic sinusitis, diagnostic code, whatever it is. You want to tell them like how this thing started. You want to, if you're claiming this as a secondary condition connected to something else, you want to explain that to them up front so that they see it, they understand it. And then you want to articulate to them how you know that's true. You could tell them that your condition started as symptoms while you were in the military from, you went to the doctor about, I don't know, maybe you had postnasal drip, or you had some really bad headaches from your sinusitis, or maybe you didn't even know it was sinusitis back then. And you want to explain to them like when those symptoms first started, where it's at in your military records, like actually reference it in like parentheses, explain that to them. If you have gaps in treatment, you want to explain those gaps in treatment. You want to talk about how you just didn't go to the doctor because it just didn't matter. You didn't need to, like you just took Motrin or whatever the case is. So as you're explaining that, and remember, you're not a doctor, so you don't have to articulate, the scientific method and how this is connected, but you do need to explain to them, your version of the story. When these things started, you were serving, on such and such, where you were in the military. If this was prompted from an injury, explain that. Explain where you were, and then make sure that you put documents in there to prove it. They need to see that evidence, and you want to corroborate your statement. You also want to, and that's for service connection, okay? Because there's always two important pieces when you're doing these personal statements. You want to, three actually. You want to give them that current diagnosis and show them that you currently have that. You want to tell them why it's service connected or how it's service connected, and then because you want to do this, because if you don't, you're only going to get it service connected. You're not going to get the right rating unless you have enough evidence and they help you out with that. You want to explain your symptoms to them. Use this in plain English. Don't try and copy the 38 CFR. That's not what they need to see. They need to see, like, in your own words, what you're dealing with. And you should know what your rating should be, because you're reading 38 CFR and you're understanding what's in there because you're talking to your doctor about it. And so you're going to put that in your personal statement so that they can also see it and they can reference it in your medical records and make this very easy. Remember, keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate this. All right, make the VA's job easy. If it's easy for them, it'll be easy for them to give you the correct rating and get you approved. You want to keep everything organized throughout the process. Remember, you're going to submit your intent to file, and then you're going to, get a binder and you're going to put all your medical records in there. You're going to highlight all the facts. You're not going to submit anything. You're going to take the time to make sure you have it right. You're going to, when there's statements in your medical records that support your claim, you're going to highlight them. You may or may not print them out. I printed mine out because I wanted to make sure I brought them to a CMP exam. I guess that's really up to you. The CMP examiner should have it when you go, but I've had experiences where for whatever reason they couldn't get on their computer, it didn't get sent over, and it was a waste of time. So bring your records if you can. You don't need non-pertinent details. You don't need to tell them about every other condition. You don't need to explain like every thing that doesn't matter, because you don't want a bunch of extra fluff. You want them just to see what the facts as they are and let them make the decision. I put on here, keep a folder for your records. I'm talking electronic folder and a personal folder, just so that you can grab it with you when you're on your way to the medical appointment for your CMP exam. And then, of course, once you get everything, review it, okay? Create your own little checklist. Make sure you have the 3 things: current diagnosis, make sure you have the connection to military service, and then, of course, make sure you have all of your symptoms or whatever criteria that you're trying to meet. Make sure there's documentation and evidence so that you can submit it. And look at that checklist in your head before you push submit, so that you're going to get an easy approval.